to explain how I came to understand there was mind control going on within the British care system, and how we attempted to deprogram this out. What we do see is that there's a cover-up of so many paedophiles, so many paedophile rings at the top that are just being pushed to the side and covered over, families that are involved in paedophilia, and again, cover-up occurring. And what happens is, I end up questioning, well, why do they need so many children? Well, how many nonces are there out there? Throughout the care system, children are expressing again and again that they're being abused, and their voices are just falling on deaf ears. I don't know how many children they do need, but in my journey to help revoke the care order held by the local social services of the child for the mother, I came across what had been going on with the mind control. What I did see was that the mother was treated in a way that I hadn't witnessed before, and I'd worked for many years with the borough, with all types of clients, but I'd never seen hatred like I saw demonstrated by all professionals towards this mother. Their behaviour was very cold, very hostile, very arrogant, ridiculing really her, me, the system. Nothing really seemed to bother them. Even in the court case fighting for the child, the social worker never turned up, and the judge subpoenaed her to attend. She still didn't attend, and it didn't seem to come to anything. I also, through the case, went to people in positions of power and saw how they buckled under the powers that be, and some turned from being very caring professionals to very cold professionals in front of my eyes. Eventually, yes, the care order was revoked and the child was returned, but in that process I had to be willing to sacrifice my career and many of my human rights, because they were demonstrating to me throughout the case that really, I suppose, that they were wanting me to drop the case, or this consequence was gradually happening. Everything they do is systematically, and so it's all done gradual, but showing you, yes, this will happen. The child was returned, and when the child was returned, she was very strange. She wasn't really behaving like a normal child. I'd worked in play schemes for many years with all different types of children. I was a very naughty child myself, but this child was different, and I hadn't actually witnessed any child like her before. She was extremely unmanageable, extremely rude. If you took her in public, then she would just stare at people, and they could smile back at her and be friendly, but she'd carry on staring at them. When it comes to play, she didn't seem to have the ability. She would destroy the toys that you gave her, and when we gave her dolls, she would actually do all types of abuse towards the dolls, acting out obviously what she'd been shown before. If you gave her paper to draw on, she would draw a little scribble in the corner and then tear that corner off and then give you it and say, here you go, there's your receipt. She was about 3 years old when she was returned. When it comes to drawing, the only things that she really did draw other than these receipts was she'd draw a line and she'd say that's a snake, she'd draw rainbows, and also she'd draw what she called evil eyes in the belly, which I never quite understood what she meant by it, but they were two big circles, black, filled in, and she would say they're the evil eyes in the belly. She is a black child, and was fostered to an African foster carer, and yet maybe you could say, oh, this is prejudice, but she had no sense of rhythm. When she was returned, she couldn't dance, and I mean, her mother is a professional singer, and I remember at one contact the mother singing to her, and the child staring in awe of like, wow, like she'd never heard singing before. And yes, when she returned, she didn't really know any music, any songs. The only song she did know was Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, How I Wonder What You Are. Yes, I'm just finding my way through. When it comes to speech, sometimes she had very limited speech, and yet on other occasions she could talk constantly, although she would talk a load of rubbish that would be very irritating, but we would listen to the rubbish because it seemed to help calm her down. And then other times she'd talk like a wise old woman full of wisdom, but it was like an old woman speaking. If you asked her direct questions regarding anything, she would seize up. So you had to not ask questions directly to find answers. The abusers, she called them the daddies. They told her to call her the daddies, apparently. And there was also the mummies. And both abused her. And she said that the daddies came into the nursery. When she'd been returned, she was placed in nursery for a short period of time, till they cut her hair and nails. But she said that the daddies came in the nursery and told her to stop drawing. As well, when the mother used to walk her to the nursery in the morning, there used to be guys sitting in the cars outside, and they would say hello in a tone that sounded like they knew the child. So I assume they were the daddies, and I assume there was no problem for them getting into the nursery. The foster carer did say on the return of the child, careful they don't take her back for being underweight. And she wasn't really underweight when she was returned. She was really underweight when she came back from Africa, but at the point of her return, she wasn't severely underweight. But on her return, it was extremely hard to get her to eat anything. It was like she'd sit with the food, but she wouldn't want to. You'd have to feed her. But it was becoming a conflict because as she was getting older, it was like, well, really, you should be feeding yourself. She'd only sleep for about 4 hours a day in the night, and then she'd be jumping around all night to begin with till she sort of learned to behave with that bit. As I say, she gradually disclosed what had happened to her in foster care, and also that she was told by the daddies she had a different name. Well, it wasn't actually how it came about. Was once she came and called herself by a different name, and her mother said, "No, your name is so and so." And then later years, I asked her, "You called yourself so and so? What was that about?" And she said, "Oh, you can't possibly expect me to remember all that far back." I mean, she was 6 when she was saying this. And I said, "Well, yes, I do." And she said, "Oh, okay. Well, the daddies told me that when I'm with them that I must be answerable to that name." So she had a different name for when she's with them. I asked her as well, like while she was in care, was anybody nice to her ever? And she said no one was ever nice to her. If they were nice, they were only nice for a short period of time, and then they turned nasty. And also, she added that, yes, the children were nice. She described abuse by white people, black people, Asian people, and also she described some sort of rituals being done with knives on her by a range of races. Due to my ignorance on mind control, and I think most of us have got ignorance around mind control actually going on in the world, but it's only starting to come out now. I couldn't understand her behaviour. I just saw it as very bizarre and tried really hard to make sense of it. Because they were using lots of occult don't know the word to use, but they were doing different occult antics around us. I suppose one was led to look down that road, which I knew very little about. I did have some friends that I asked, and I read some books from the local library. Previously, a few years prior to this, I did have a client that said she was being attacked by people that were using Ovia, and I went to my previous boss and asked him about it, and he taught me somewhat on it, and he said that 95% of it was the mind, and 5% was real. But it wasn't really adding up because it seemed like 95% was real, and only 5% could be explained by the mind from what we were seeing going on. Through trial and error, really, therefore, we found ways to manage the child. And after about 5 years, I came across a book in the library by David Icke. And in that, it explained about mind control somewhat. This started to make more sense. It was there was a book written by a woman called Kathy O'Brien called Transformation of America. And so I proceeded to go and get the book, which was quite hard to get. It's not available it wasn't available in the shops then. On reading the book, then yes, things started to make much more sense because she spoke of different authors, different personalities in a sense within a person, and this started to make sense of the child because she did have different personalities, some old, some young, some couldn't really speak, others could, some had different accents, some spoke in different languages. And through that, it helped to understand what was happening more. I wrote to Kathy O'Brien to explain our situation because I didn't know anyone else in the world that was in that position. And she said to not take on the occult aspects of it because it doesn't really work. But then later, which was difficult to sort of take from her because everything was appearing like it was to do with occult practices. But then later I found Fritz Springmere, and he's saying unless you take out the demon from the altar, you won't actually be able to totally deprogram. So this was causing a conflict of which to follow, because they can't both be right. Reading it was a generational thing. We then realised that it was possible the mother was also gone through some form of mind control in the past. And so we started applying the deprogramming techniques learnt from Kathy O'Brien to the mother, which was writing out, in a sense, the memory, and then gradually more memory comes forward, is what we found. In school, she was called by a different name, which was quite strange because her name isn't difficult to say, but this is what she was told was, oh, it's difficult to say, difficult to remember. So they called her by a different name, to the point that even the teachers called her by it. And when she left school at 16, the teachers said he couldn't write a reference with her real name on it because he'd got so used to calling her the other name, which is a bit strange because the register surely had her real name on it. But this name that they gave her in school actually appeared again because as she's a musician, and we was finding it very difficult to get back into the music industry, didn't actually know why, and people said use MySpace. So we did look on MySpace and we found that someone was already claiming to be her when we got there. But we wrote to that person, because they were white, apparently, and said, you're not actually her, and this is her profile if you'd like to join. And then they changed their name from her name to the name that they used at school. So, yes, the other name is an important issue. And what we've learned from mind control is, yes, various names are used for different authors. The mother around this time was experiencing many ailments, and the gang stalking was going on too. And so we thought, well, maybe some of these ailments are to do with programs, so it's worth looking and trying to deprogram them out. She started with hives. She had this rash all over her skin. It was like dry patches, and we diagnosed it as hives, and was buying antihistamine tablets, which was helping to keep it down. One of the footnotes in Kathy O'Brien's book, it said how they use histamine in their programming. So it was worth looking into. She deprogrammed it out and found that she'd been left in a field when she was at school, primary school in England, London, and she had eyes that were so puffy, she remembered, but they left her in the field with the hay fever. And more to that program, but once she'd deprogrammed out the memory of this, the skin irritation stopped and there was no more need for the antihistamine. And so we realised that this could be applied to many of the ailments, and yes, each ailment that she looked at disappeared once she'd remembered what was associated with that ailment, it seems. Many of these ailments she wasn't really experiencing before the child return, so I don't actually know whether the child return was triggering it or whether the gang stalking was triggering it, or just the stress of the life that we were being put under was triggering it. But quickly the ailments were removed. With regards to the child, I tried to teach her to deprogram, but she had problems with writing. Whenever she wrote, she would go into a trance. So she did her best. She did try, but she wasn't really able to deal with the trancing. But over time, and as she aged, I suppose, she did get stronger at fighting against the trancing. I wrote back to Kathy O'Brien on this matter, and she said yes, the child would be okay. Come puberty, she felt she would be able to address the deprogramming more then. And yes, when she got to about 10, 11, then she was more able to focus on deprogramming, and by that time I'd learned a number of techniques that were able to give to her to help her deprogram out more of her memory. And she became a much stronger person, fighting against any trancing. And also what we found was exercise helped. She may have been in a real stubborn, horrible mood, really, but if we got her to do exercise, run, play on the swing ball, punch bag was very good. It seemed that she changed from being angry inside to being more happy, and it seemed to release or change something. So we found that very helpful. As time went on as well, she was able to disclose more that, like, for example, the head teacher that we used to have come and visit a house to assess her educational achievement. She years later realised that, or remembered or told me that this was the teacher that was actually in the nursery that used to come in another borough to read her a story. And there I asked, well, why didn't you tell me this before? This is years later. But she said there's many things she couldn't say before. It was as if she wasn't able to say, but as time went on, she was able to say this. Also, she became aware of the effects of colours and logos were having on her moods and affecting what authors were there. Her memory is extremely good, like goes way back. And therefore, she's able to apply the deprogramming techniques, but they have to be done at her pace. And anyone who's deprogramming, that needs to be done at their pace. So what I'm trying to say is not only is we can see that the British care system is taking children unfairly a lot of the time away from their families into abusive situations. There's actually a structure, I believe, in place to create mind-controlled slaves to use for whatever they wish to use them for.